Check, check, 1, 2. Hope you like a little country, some rock and roll and blues, 'cause we sure love playing for good people like you. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2.
Welcome to Music Local and Sustainable, the radio show that features discussions with and the music of local musicians. I am your host, Dave Lake. Tonight we are talking with Isaac Smith of the Isaac Smith Band, who is a well-known singer-songwriter around Savannah. Welcome, Isaac Smith.
It's good to be here.
Tell me a little bit about your musical journey.
I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a son of a pastor in a Pentecostal church, and so you can imagine that life was kind of crazy, not just from a religious perspective, but because my dad was the pastor of a large church, it seemed like church was life, and that's what we did. So I grew up in the church and around it, and that is how I began my journey in music, dabbing into the black gospel worship world of church at a very young age.
So it was a black Pentecostal church.
It was. Well, it was in Atlanta, in the city. It was called the Tabernacle, and it was a very diverse church. They prided themselves on having 60 plus different nationalities, all the way from Nigeria to the Bahamas and all in between. And so it was a very multicultural church that really shifted towards the black gospel style of music, and it's very intricate. At the time, honestly, there was moments where I didn't quite love black gospel music. There was other things that I loved more, but it definitely served a purpose in my life, and something that I grew to love, and something that has grew to extremely influence the soul that's in me and my style of writing. You may not hear it so much in the chord structure or the complexity in music that I play and write, now that I tend to do more folky, indie, country rock stuff. But the push and the drive behind it and the emotion, the soul behind it is definitely a black gospel influence for sure.
And what were some of the other influences early in your life?
Church was number one, and that was something that I was a part of my entire life and grew all through high school with that. And as I graduated high school, I actually interned with this lady. Her name's Jeannie Mayo. She's a youth communicator, and we began to really get to see a lot more than just the black gospel side of the world. It introduced me into a whole nother area of Christian music that I've never really dabbled in, from all the way from Australia, like Hillsong, and some of the mainstream stuff here in America, like Chris Tomlin, and those became an influence in my life. But truly, worship and faith and in that realm of stuff was the only thing I knew musically. I would say that I was sheltered in a way from the rest of the world. Even though I was born in '86 and went through the '90s, big people like Nirvana wasn't something that was close to my heart or close to my world of influence, because it just wasn't. I wish it was. But nonetheless, we're here today. Luckily, those songs have been recorded, and I get to listen to it now. So I'm definitely inspired by all genres of music today, and I look forward to hearing creative, imaginative stuff as a present and from the past, and discovering these bands that people have known for a long time. It's like brand new to me, so it's kind of fun, but at times it's embarrassing too. Like, hey, you know this band? No, I don't know that band. But yeah, so I'm continually finding new influences as we go on this journey.
And so on your album Magnolia Bloom, are there any songs that you think reflect that strong spiritual background?
Honestly, I don't think so. I went into the church world, and I was a worship pastor or a worship leader or music director for some time, and so performing in front of people and playing songs of praise and worship and spiritual attributes has been something that I've done forever. And so writing this album, I think it would have been easy to just write about church and write about frustrations of church or good things about church or whatever it may have been. But I really wanted to push myself and challenge myself just to write about relationships, people, and realistic things that people go through. And it was a challenge, yet it became kind of an easy flow to write something that was more relatable to people and get out of the church world for me. I wanted to have two separate worlds, if you will.
Although a song like Love's War It could be faith. It could be love of church as well as love of someone else.
Absolutely. And I think that's the beautiful thing about songwriting and songs in general is that you can write a song and it can totally be interpreted in another way. It's a cool art piece to really be able to influence people, and you may not even had thought to influence them in that way. So yeah, Love's War absolutely could be something spiritual. There's something that keeps me awake in the middle of the night. Like that could totally be like you wrestling with or a spiritual influence in your life that you're just not sure of, or just you should go this way or shouldn't go this way. And it totally could be a battle of spirituality or sin or whatever. You can interpret it in a couple ways. It could be in a situation where just mindful thoughts. You're battling between right and wrong within a relationship, or just battling the idea of who is this one for me. And so Love's War could be totally interpreted in many different ways, and I could totally see the spiritual connection with a lot of people that look at that for sure. And maybe there was when I wrote it. Who knows? Maybe it came out that way.
Because it speaks to war in the heart, but it's that feeling, that sense that keeps you from falling apart.
Sure, absolutely. And there definitely is a degree of that. In faith with me, it's definitely shifted through the years. I'm not so much Pentecostal as I once was, but the idea of grace and mercy and love still resonates very strong in me, more than ever. And I think that a song like Love's War echoes that of, there's always going to be something inside of you, whether you believe in the Christian faith or just faith in general. There's something inside of us all that pushes us to lean towards grace and mercy and love.
Yeah. And in particular, I like the line, the heart is heavy, but the soul is light.
Yeah. I think that we can get caught up in, like, your heart can just be incredibly drenched in doubt, and it can be incredibly drenched in self-pity or whatever it may be that you face in life. But I think it's important when facing those things to keep your soul light within that, so that you don't fall completely apart. There's a balance to dealing with situations. There's a balance to dealing with hard times and good times, and if you have a heavy heart and a heavy soul, I think that's just going to be a place of you're going to fall apart, and it's going to be hard to get back up.
Can we do that song?
Yeah, absolutely. Comes the light, the crack in my window. There is no cover that can save me now. And I've let it all go. Gone with the night. Here is my body, shamed and cold. I'm fighting the war inside my heart. It keeps me from falling apart. Fighting the war inside my heart. It keeps me from falling apart. There is somebody that keeps me awake through the night. There is somebody, that guides me through love's own war. My heart is heavy, and my soul is light. Oh, and my heart is heavy, and my soul is light. of the letters kept in the dark shine through my heart, and hide they cannot. Oh, and I let it all go, gone with the night. Oh, and here is my body, ashamed and cold. Oh, and fighting the war inside my heart. It keeps me from falling apart. Fighting the war inside my heart. It keeps me from falling apart. Oh, there is somebody that keeps me awake through the night. There is somebody that guides me through love's own war. My heart is heavy, and my soul is light. My heart is heavy, oh, and my soul is light.
What was the inspiration behind that song?
You know, I think with work or jobs or relationships, there's always a point where it's just difficult. I work at a church now, and I'm a worship leader there, and it's a small church, and I'm able to do that and be able to still do my music on the side as well and write. And this song, I think, came from a frustration or a natural tendency to have doubt in faith, or doubt in the relationship that I had built with this thing called church. And more so doubt within the church rather than doubt and faith in God. It's becoming a burden on my heart, and instead of talking about it with people, I wrote it out in a song, and I think that's where it's come from. Since then, I'm over it and I've gotten past it, and so I think when I sing the song now, it's not so much of a struggle and doubt and faith, but more as a reminder of, you know what, there's always going to be a struggle. There's always going to be this war, this thing that's whether inside of us or with our friends and family or faith, that it is inevitable that there's going to be something. It's just how we deal with it and how we approach it is the way we get a good outcome.
How does that affect the way you perform a song? The fact that it had a distinct meaning and a distinct emotional basis when you wrote it. Now you're over that, as you said?
Sure. I think with any artist, think of artists that have been on tour or been popular for years and years and years, or decades even. They clearly wrote songs in a place, or they even just bought a song that was really good. I think writing and recording an album is completely different than performing live and sharing the stage with your bandmates and performing to an audience. I think, like we talked about earlier, interpretation is everything, and it's okay to have different interpretations. I think long as you pour emotion and soul into a song, regardless on your current feeling or your current situation, there can be still a great reaction from the crowd and touch someone personally. There's a song that are called Magnolia Bloom, and it's the one song that I focused on that was clearly about my childhood and dreaming and wishing for a wife one day. And it goes fast forwards 25 years later, and I find my wife, Tatiana, and it's clearly about that, and I call her my Magnolia Bloom in that. I don't mention her name, I don't necessarily mention like the circumstance. And I was playing a show, and this guy came up to me, I kid you not, he had tears in his eyes. He's like, man, that Magnolia Bloom song really hit me. I was like, well, that's interesting, why? And he said, man, my best friend, when we were young, died in a magnolia tree. He fell and he died in a magnolia tree. And that song just touched my heart because it just brought back all these memories of us together And I was like, that's incredible. I'm so glad and so thankful that we all have different minds and different places in life that we're able to look at a song and interpret it in a way. So yeah, when it comes to emotion on stage, I think as long as we're giving it our all, regardless of what's in our minds, I think it can be interpreted in different ways. The key is to have fun and just believe in what you're doing no matter what, and you'll have a good show.
So Magnolia Bloom actually came after you married Tatiana?
Yeah, it absolutely did. I mean, all these songs I wrote within the span of a month, and it was the first time I ever wrote songs to begin with. I wrote maybe 2 worship songs in my past at church, but the demand for writing a worship song is very little, because, I mean, you just do essentially covers every Sunday morning of anything, and it's fine, and you still get paid. Like, it's not a big deal. But as an artist in the outside world of that, it's important to write your own material. And at this juncture, I was a year and a half of just gigging around town in Savannah, playing restaurants and bars, and as fun and as great and as wonderful it is to have the opportunity to do those things, there just wasn't a whole lot of gain from those situations, and it just became mundane. And so the idea of, or the longing to play a real show, as I would call it, there's a difference between gigging and shows. I really, really wanted to do that, but in order to do that, you had to write. And so I sat down with a guitar, and maybe inspired by loneliness or self-doubt in that time, I just worked through it and wrote a 6-song EP and got the band together, showed some stuff, and there's some friends of mine that we were already gigging together. I was like, hey, what do you think of these? Let's work on these parts. And we worked through it, and we went to my friend Brad Binion's house and brought in an LS9 Yamaha console, a digital console, and literally just recorded all that onto a thumb drive, and he live mixed it. And there was no way for us to do post-production on it, because it all came out as a left and right file. We played all 6 songs about 3 times each, and we picked the best one that we liked. And the sole purpose of it was to just have what we call scratch tracks to take to a studio and make it happen. But it captured so much soul and so much great feeling in the room. And yes, there's errors on it, and yes, it's not perfect, but I didn't want to sacrifice what I felt when I heard those songs played again. So I was like, you know what? Let's put this on a record now. And so we took those 6 songs and I put them on a CD and put it on Spotify and iTunes and all that stuff. And so within, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks, where I went from not being a songwriter to writing songs, putting it on a scratch track that turned into an album within just less than 2 months. So I'm really proud of that, and really proud to have such great talent and people around me that are able to rally for a win. And so kudos to those guys that made that happen.
Who were the bandmates on the album?
So we've got myself playing acoustic guitar and singing, my dear friend Robert Saunders on drums. He's, in my opinion, one of the best drummers here in Savannah. And Ethan Stewart is an electric guitar player, and he played with me on that. He played all the electric stuff, and like I said, we did it all live, so that was just the 3 of us sitting around making it happen, and it produced a fairly decent EP.
Let's talk a little bit about Magnolia Bloom.
Sure.
The inspiration for that was Tatiana?
Absolutely. I live down here in downtown Savannah, and I was looking out my window, and it just happened to be a time where these magnolia trees were blooming. And the smell is very distinct. I think smell is one of those things that just takes you back to a memory. And it just took me back to a time when I was like 8, 9 years old. We lived in Decatur, Georgia, and we had a yard with a magnolia tree in it. And I want to be honest, I wasn't the coolest kid, but to kind of escape things in life, I found this tree, this magnolia tree, as my escaping place. So I called it my wishing tree, my climbing tree. And I would climb this tree all the time. And I don't know if you're familiar with magnolias, but before they bloom, they have this really hard brown cone, and they come out with a bunch of little red seeds with all in them. But I started to take these seeds off, and I, just like when you go up to a fountain, you throw a coin in and make a wish. In my mind, I was like, well, if I take these seeds and throw them out to the ground, maybe they can be a wish too. So, whatever I'm wishing for a Hot Wheels car, or, whatever it may be, I like to think as an 8, 9-year-old boy, I threw that out and I wished for a life in the future. I wished for a career or whatever, in your 8-9-year-old mind can handle. And I like to think that I wish for a woman that I could call my own one day. And so in the first part of the song, it's a story of this boy in a tree making a wish for a girl one day. And then it goes on to the second verse of that girl finding him, and then he eventually calls her his magnolia bloom. And so that's the inspiration, and Tati is definitely my beautiful magnolia bloom.
Yeah, I might start now referring to you as the Proust of Savannah music, because there's a famous part of the writings of Proust that involves sense memory and the smell. In your case, it's the smell of magnolia.
Yeah.
As the inspiration.
It always takes me back. And now that I've written the song, it's forever thing that when I see or smell magnolia, I can't not think about this song or Tatiana and what it represents for us. So it's a great song that I love, and if no one likes it, it's a song for us.
Why don't we hear that?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a boy that made a wish one day in a tree. He felt broad dreams his way. Then one seed fell to the ground. When it hit the ground, it sprung a voice inside. Grow, my darling, grow and be. Grow, my darling, sway with me and bloom, magnolia, bloom. One smell of your fragrance has got me lost forever in bloom, magnolia, bloom. Flourish all around me, always be beside me, you'll always be my magnolia bloom. That same boy grew and met a girl that made him smile with every word she said. Then her lips touched his heart one night and spoke in his ear, quietly said, grow, my darling, grow and be. Grow, my darling, oh, sway with me. Grow, my darling, all around me, always be beside me, you'll always be my magnolia bloom. You'll always be my magnolia bloom. You'll always be my magnolia bloom.
Are there any artists that you find inspirational?
I want to be honest, as a musician and prior to writing one song, it's one thing to get up on a stage and play music and have fun, but there was moments in my life, a lot of times as a musician, that I just did not enjoy listening to music. And it could be because the only source of music that I ever grew up with was church music. And so it just wasn't this passive thing that I could go listen to a song that I can relate to other than faith. And so it wasn't till recent. My wife introduces me to music all the time. It's crazy. When we got married, she had a MacBook Pro, and I was like, why is this thing so slow, and why can't it save any documents? I go look at her iTunes, and she literally had enough music to play nonstop 24/7 for 2 months without repeating one song. And I was like, good Lord. I did not know anybody, and still can't fathom the idea of loving music that much. She doesn't really play anything. She sings with me occasionally, and she has a beautiful voice. I wish she would do it more often. But yeah, it's inspiring, and it's also scary to think that people love music this much in life. And so it wasn't till recent years, after we were married, that I got to start enjoying music just for listening pleasure, to relate to a moment in my life, or just like, man, this is really fun for a road trip, whatever it may be. And it's so funny, she'll introduce a song to me or an artist to me, and I'm like, it's all right. And then a year later, hey babe, I found this artist that is amazing. She's like, yeah, I showed you that a year ago, and you just don't listen. That is the story of our life in our marriage. But yeah, she showed me a few artists that I've grown to absolutely love. And I'm an album guy, so I can't just listen to a bunch of random stuff. I stick to an artist and I just go with it. And one of the first amazing inspiration, musically, technically, and lyrically, and tonally, was Jason Isbell. I heard him, and it just became this amazing sound to me. And it specifically was the album Southeastern. I think it's a beautiful album, and I think it's a rarity that you get an artist that is as qualified and as talented as he is to make a record that is so flawless. It's just incredible to see an album like that. So that's been a huge inspiration in my style and my emotional push on describing life events, whether it pertains to me or someone else. It's just a huge inspiration. Since then, I've dabbled in listening to more people. Kind of a not so much known, not so much mainstream artist is a David Ramirez out of Austin, Texas. He's an incredible songwriter, and I would say that a lot of my style sounds like his. Maybe not as good, but he's incredible, and he's been a huge inspiration. And now, a new band that I've become to love is Dawes. I can't get enough of All Your Favorite Bands. I just love that album. It's amazing. But I find inspiration in everything. It's not just acoustic guitar music. It's not just indie music or rock music. And there's incredible inspirations in soul and R&B, from James Blake to John Legend and all in between. I love it all, and it's just great to listen to and be inspired and figure out, well, how can I incorporate this into my style and the way I work. Without inspiration, it would suck to be on this journey alone without it.
Well, I'll have to ask Tatiana what she's got on her MacBook laptop to see what she's listening to now when I see her around town. How do you think some of those influences have worked into your music?
From a tonal standpoint, those artists are just completely blowing my mind and pushing me to new levels with my guitar playing. And that goes along with vocals as well. But lyrically, I think Jason Isbell and David Ramirez, they just have a way of creating stories and describing a place that, instead of just saying, hey, we're here in Georgia, talk about the climate, talk about the specifics of the room, and dissecting their songs makes it very viable to me as a songwriter to approach a song with, let's create this mood, let's create this space that we can learn or breathe within this song. And so they've been a huge inspiration, and a huge, more than just inspiration, a tool for me to learn and perfect a craft that I'm still learning and will forever learn how to make it right.
On Magnolia Bloom, the EP, you did the whole band.
Yeah.
But you do a lot of the Magnolia Bloom songs as a solo artist.
Sure, yeah.
Are there any of those songs that are particularly effective with the band, and or are there those that are particularly effective with the solo, or it really doesn't make any difference?
Yeah, I don't think it makes any difference. I mean, I wrote them all alone in my house on an acoustic guitar. So they were made for a solo situation from the very beginning. And I think just adding the pieces from what Robert's done with the drums and what Ethan did with the guitar was just icing on the cake. So you take those things away, it's still a good cake. You add Ethan and Robert, it's just a great addition, and they really make those songs come alive. And the trick is, I think, is knowing, all right, we're adding an instrument, so that means I don't have to play as much. Or the more things you add, the less involved every single person has to be on every note. And so I think it's just deciphering, let's not overplay this part, or on the slower, easier stuff, we've got room to grow. So let's make this and build it up into something really great. So I love it both ways. I love solo and I love the full band, and I think they both have their place.
It sounds like each of the artists in the band sort of developed their own part.
Yeah, well, it was a collective. I wrote all the songs, and when I'm writing a song, I definitely have a bass lead or a bass feel melody of the song. We sit down and talk with Ethan. I'm like, I'm hearing this, and he was like this. I'm like, no, more like this, and then he'll add his own interpretation to it. And although they are my songs, and I like to say that I had most creative input on it, I'm not going to take all the credit, or even while we're doing stuff, be like, don't do that. Just let's see what happens. Especially because it was just a scratch track recording. It was like, we'll get an idea. We'll get these ideas. But it turned out, and we have such a good flow together as a band and as a unit, that I trust them, and they're great at what they do, and it turned out to be great. So I'm not opposed to people helping out with a song. I'm not opposed to people writing parts for the song. It's great. I go into writing a song with the intention of finishing it by myself, but anybody else's input is totally welcome and accepted.